Hi, everybody. Wow, we have a big group today, I think. Thank you, everybody. And I see a lot of new names, so this is very exciting. I see, all right, keep letting people in. All right. Little crazy this morning, I guess, if you're on the West Coast, or this afternoon, just a lot of things going on. So I'm sorry I'm about half a minute late, but it's really good to see all these, a lot of repeat visitors and friends. And today we're going to be talking, in fact, I'll share my screen. We're going to be talking about strategy. Maybe, in fact, here, I'll go like this, and I will get into this slideshow. All right. And by the way, let me do all the housekeeping stuff. So today we're going to talk about major donor philanthropic facilitation strategies. Don't try and say that 3 times fast, okay? But I like to call it philanthropic facilitation. This is like insider baseball. We're not going to say that to donors, but that's really what we're doing. The idea, the word fundraising, I mean, it's kind of like, it's like extracting. We're not extracting. We're helping facilitate philanthropy, right? Okay, so we're going to talk about strategies, and maybe if you want, in the chat tool, you can say if yay or nay. But I've often heard so many people talk about, well, you've got to have a strategy for the donor. You've got to have a strategy. And yet I haven't heard that much about how to develop a strategy. So we're going to talk about that today. And I'm going to give you what I've learned, because in case y'all, I don't know what percentage of you are market smart customers, aside from just being using the training course, but our customer success staff are very similar in their roles to fundraisers in supporting donors to give. So our team is required to create strategies for our customers. And what I've learned is that process is very much the same as what fundraisers need to do to develop strategies for major donor prospects. Okay. So here's our housekeeping items. What we'll do today is I'm going to give you like a little presentation on how to develop strategies for these amazing, kind folks. Then we're going to break into groups for about 10-15 minutes. And if you don't mind, Tricia, if you'll type that and paste that into the chat to remind everybody to tell your story, share it with your little group, break into groups and share your story of how you have, if you have, offered value to help people more deeply involve themselves in your mission and move themselves forward in the consideration process, the decision-making process, which, by the way, you notice I don't like words like move or moves management, or I mean, we'll use them about the ask and did you make the ask and all this kind of stuff. But generally, all this works better when the donor asks you, what do you want me to do next? You know, because you've already strategically help them involve themselves so deeply. They understand the problem. They understand how they can make impact. So it's always better when the supporter, the donor, moves themselves forward in the process rather than you trying to move them. And we'll get into that a little bit more. I'll explain a little further. But I think it's important how we talk to ourselves, to our staff, and to others, especially administrators, who don't understand the process and they think it's about moving and extracting and soliciting, when it's really about collaborating and facilitating and guiding. So think about, as I go through this, when you've strategically offered value to help people involve themselves more deeply so they move themselves forward in the process, and then we'll come back from those groups and tell the story if there are good ones. If you feel someone's got a really good one, then come forward and we'll share it with the rest of the group, and then we'll wrap up. Okay. Little housekeeping items also. Remember that anyone involved with your cause can attend these events. That's probably why there's so many more people. It's growing. We've only been doing this for less than a year, I think. And the number of people that show up keep growing. That hopefully means that people are getting value and they're free. So if you want to invite administrators, VPs, prospect researchers, anybody's allowed to come. This is for Market Smart customers and e-course customers, people who are just taking the e-course, that's fine. You can, just share the link that you get from Trisha, from our marketing, maybe put it on your calendar and make it a repeat. And I'm always supposed to remind y'all that if you're taking the e-course with Dr. James, it is an annual subscription. So if, and of course, remember that one subscription entitles everybody in your organization. It can be 100, it can be 1,000 people to take the course. So get the maximum value by sharing that with others. And just remember, it's an annual subscription that's recurring. So if you decide you don't want it anymore, then just cancel the subscription. Let us know. Also, if you decide you get value, and if you're especially a Market Smart customer, or if you want to learn more about what we do for nonprofits, like how we actually make money by providing value to you, just go to our website and click the Let's Talk, and it's very painless process. We don't sell, we help you decide if it's right for you. Okay, so let's get into this. I love this quote. If anyone ever figures out where I might have found this, I don't remember where I found it, so I just said unknown author, but I love this because it's when we stop thinking that our jobs are about asking for money, and we start thinking that our jobs are about inspiring people to make a difference, everything changes. And that's kind of the baseline, the foundation of the strategy. And again, I've just heard it live and in person from administrators, especially. And if there are administrators on the line, I guess I'm picking on you a little bit, because people in ivory towers can often say, do this and do that. And it's not about doing stuff and asking for money. It's about inspiring and helping and facilitating and guiding. So especially where we see this, or where I've felt this, I've seen this, is on the traditional fundraising process. And we'll get to strategy, I promise. We're going to get to strategy, but I want to lay down this first. In the traditional process, you see, especially if you just Google it, you'll get all kinds of variations of this kind of linear design. Is that there's prospect identification, and then we assign people to caseloads, and then we qualify them. We have discovery, and we make sure they're qualified to, and then we cultivate, solicit, negotiate, maybe dot some I's, cross some T's. How big is their name going to be on the building? And we get the gift, and then we prove to them that we did the right thing with their money. Can I get some nods? Like, does anybody recognize this? This is the process, right? Okay, so I don't like this graphic. And by the way, remember, if you don't know me, I fancy myself as a major donor who got ticked off at all of this stuff and decided that I was going to change the way it is, and started building software. So what you hear from me is really from the perspective of a donor. Not to say that you all aren't donors, you could be, but generally when I give, there's a comma in the gift. And that may or may not change things, but anyway, so this process is designed by, I think, from consultants and administrators, and gives them a sense of power over what you're doing as a fundraiser and what you're doing to move donors. And so they love like monitoring calls, number of calls, visits, meetings and activities. I've seen some places like reward fundraisers for getting the most meetings and making the most asks. And meanwhile, the one who like does the fewest meetings and the fewest asks, but actually raises the most money, like doesn't get the accolades as much. It's like, let's not reward people for doing activities. Let's reward them for outcomes. But I know, and I'm not saying that we don't need to measure activities, but I think there's a little bit too much emphasis on what people do as fundraisers. And there's also sometimes a drive to skip a lot of the steps and just, I call this drive-by solicitation, or they're really ambushes. They're like, okay, if you meet with the donor, ask them for money because the wealth screening said that they could give at this level or something. And I'm not a fan of that either. These are the drive-by solicitations. It's high pressure for everybody. Nobody likes it, and it makes donors not want to give again, frankly. So Dr. James kind of backs me up on this by saying transactional small gift metrics, which is what these are. These are coming from like direct response metrics for direct mail and everything. It's like, okay, it's a volume game. If you get your numbers up, you'll succeed. So somehow that translates really well for administrators into major gifts, but it doesn't translate so well for the major donors or the fundraisers who are trying to work in a relational, not a transactional environment. So he says transactional small gift metrics don't apply to large gift relational operations. And I see some head nodding. So I think people are agreeing. David Lively is someone who wrote a book on managing major gift officers. And he wrote visits. This measure of output is inadequate and outdated. Visits alone are meaningless. They fail to illustrate forward progress with a single prospective donor. And I like that because the idea is what we want to do is measure and monitor. Is the relationship deepening? Is the donor moving themselves forward in the consideration process, in the decision-making process? So finally, he says, counting the number of visits does not reflect quality, it just reflects volume. So again, it's more of a direct response kind of measurement. So what I'd like to present to you instead is the way I've added to the process. Of course, it makes it look a little more complicated, but what we do at MarketSmart, or what we recommend, is that sure, there might be some prospect identification. And if you're a customer, you know that we usually use that to survey supporters to find out from them, do they feel they're preliminarily qualified? And if they're not, then most of them are not going to get outreach, and they will get automated cultivation to warm them up until such time that they're completely qualified, not to be in your caseload at first, but just for outreach, to then meet, have a discovery meeting, and then eventually, after you fully qualify them, then they'll be in your caseload to work in a one-on-one way, cultivate that relationship more deeply. And then eventually you move to solicitation, which I prefer self-solicitation, where the donor is looking at menus, options, zeroing in, maybe taking a tour, meeting researchers, things like this to understand how they want to give. And then you go to dotting the I's and crossing the T's. You consummate the gift and move into stewardship. So I hope this makes sense. It does complicate the process, but then again, it's not transactional. It's relational, and relationships are messier. So now I'm going to add to that, because this is all what you do essentially, but then I want to add Dr. James. And if you're at this part in the course, you'll remember that Dr. James' research breaks this down into a hero story, the hero monomyth, where there's an original identity that each donor has. That's their motivations that you need to discover. That's their why. That's their, well, I was a scholarship awardee and I couldn't have gone to college without that money and from that scholarship. So that's why I care about the school, and that's why I specifically care about scholarships. Or maybe it's a hospital. You know, the nurse stayed with my mom every night and she was amazing, you know, and that's why I am motivated. That's my original identity. But what I want, what Dr. James talks about is what you want, the donor wants is a victory. They want to win a victory and become the hero in their own life story. He calls it autobiographical heroism. So all of us want to, and the best example of this is Scrooge in A Christmas Carol. You know, Scrooge was mean and selfish, and then he saw that his gravestone said that he would be remembered as a miser and unliked, unloved. And he decided, well, that's not how I want to be remembered. That's not the autobiography that I want to leave. I want to be victorious in my autobiography. I want that changed. So I'm going to become more generous, more philanthropic, more caring. And that's what all of us want, but especially people with capacity know that they can use their wealth and share it to gain a victory that enhances their identity, right? So this all comes from Dr. James. I don't want to repeat all his training because that would take hours, but there are essentially two challenges that a fundraiser has to, and there will be multiple challenges, but really it boils down to two. Is there's going to be a challenge invitation where you've gotten to know the donor to a degree that you've completely qualified them and they've qualified you, that they want you to be their facilitator. They're opting in. They're like, okay, we've met. You asked me, meaning fundraiser, has asked me a lot of discovery questions. You've really gained alignment and you've offered some things for me to do, like maybe take a tour of the hospital to see what's lacking and why we need funds, or what the vision could be if only we had more funds, and so on. So, and then there's this, that's the invitation to go on that journey and get more deeply involved. And then next is the challenge that is the actual solicitation, which can be offered in a proposal. So I know many of you are like experts and have been in this a long time. I hope this isn't old hat, especially if you took the course, but I want to connect these dots before I get into strategy, and I hope I get some head nods that this all makes sense. Okay. Now I'm going to take all that I just said and I want to simplify it. And I got this from a guy named Dan Shepard, who maybe some of you see on LinkedIn posting things from time to time. Nice guy, been in fundraising forever and really, really understands the process. So I can't take credit for this, but he said it all comes down to why, what, how. That's if you really want to break it down first, and you can't do one without the other. In other words, you can't offer someone a recommendation that they should use their IRA for a QCD, a qualified charitable distribution, and make a gift. You can't tell them how to make a gift before understanding their why and the what. So the why is their deep motivations, which we talked about before, their original identity. The what is what you learn as you gain alignment and more deep involvement and understand what they might want to give to. And then you go to finally to the how, which is to help them share their wealth wisely in the most effective, efficient manner and get the most bang for their buck and such. So, the key to this complicated graphic now is that what you do as a fundraiser should always be aligned with where the donor resides in their consideration continuum. So you may hear from experts in the field that you can't make a donor give on your timeline. I mean, unless you work for a charity that's disaster oriented and there was just a hurricane that went through, then your timeline is pretty obvious and there's a good reason for it. But otherwise, it's very hard to make someone give when you want them to give. You can only help them move themselves forward, and then ultimately it's up to them. And hopefully you've helped them see that there's urgency to the problem. But what you do strategically, and we're finally, I promise, going to get into strategy, what you do strategically and how you create your strategy must be aligned first with where the donor resides in their consideration continuum. And if you don't know where they reside, you've got to ask them, because otherwise you'll skip steps and that creates friction and makes people feel uncomfortable. It's like, whoa, 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 you're moving too fast. You know, we've all had that experience where we walk into a store, and this is just transactional, walk into a store and you're looking at something and you kind of want to try on the clothes, and then somebody comes over, hey, can I help you with anything? And you're like, no. I mean, even if you want help, you often just say no. I don't know why that is, but I think it's just, you're like, hold on, can we do a warm up here? Like talk about the weather for a second or something, or ask me my size. I don't know. There's something about that. So you don't want to skip steps. You got to start with why, and then you go to what, and then you go to how. All right. So let's now talk about strategy. And strategy, here are the basics, and this works whether you're in sales, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in fundraising, or whether you are trying to win the Super Bowl, in fact, is that you always have to begin with the outcome. Plant the flag. What is the outcome you desire and your organization desires? And hopefully the donor desires. What does everybody desire? And then work backwards from there. Okay, as Lively says, you want to reverse engineer the process, but you kind of need to plant the flag. Doesn't mean that the flag can't move later as you get more information, but you got to start somewhere and plant that flag. So what does that mean? That means that you want to decide on, even if it's early in the relationship, you're good. This is a placeholder at first. Don't worry if it's wrong. Start with a target ask amount. Okay. Plant that flag, recognizing it's a placeholder, but you got to have something. Then you need to decide on a target ask date. And when I say ask, a lot of times I'm talking about proposals. But you could do it the verbal, you know, the more like the way the consultants train you with the high wire act, the high pressure ask, you know, the solicitation. I guess if that's what's right and appropriate, that's fine. I find that I like when people give me menus or proposals and we can collaborate about it and talk about it, is a little less, you know, would you consider giving $1 million? If we've collaborated and done this process properly, there shouldn't be any pressure involved in this, honestly, anyway. But plant that flag, and I can't repeat it enough. It's a temporary placeholder at first, but just put down something, okay? Then you need to plot out value exchanges. Value exchanges. The key to this is recognizing that it's value that helps people move themselves forward in their consideration continuum. People don't move forward unless there's an exchange of value, right? There is no altruism. I'm getting really like philosophical, but everybody wants something, even if it's to be anonymous in their giving. It's not altruistic. They're still getting something even if it's just that they get to look themselves in the mirror every day saying, I feel like a good person. I did good on this earth, quietly, silently, anonymously. So putting that aside, otherwise there's value exchanges that if they're not going to be anonymous, they've opted in and they want to work with you. There are value exchanges that you want to think of it like you're using a magnet rather than a stick. Moves management isn't really about this. If you understand it and dig deep into it, it's not really about moving people, but the phrase implies that it is about moving people. And that's kind of a problem. It's not about a stick and moving people. It's about helping them move themselves forward. And what will help them move forward is if you offer people value that is in line with where they reside in the consideration continuum, their consideration continuum. And that's going to break down into the three categories of, and you could just ask yourself, are they in the why stage, the what stage, or the how stage? So if they're in the why stage, the value that they want, well, actually, I'll get to that in a second. Let me stay on track here. So what you want to do is ask yourself, using this little graph, the why, what, how, what can you offer, provide, or do to help the donor advance? This is why we call it advancement, right? So they gain a victory that will enhance their identity. And it may even be small victories. It might be like taking a tour of the school or coming back for homecoming. I'm using colleges because they're so easy, but it might be meeting with a researcher that's working on a cure for some disease, So what can give them a small victory that will enhance their identity? And it's got to be oriented, that offer, so it resonates. It will resonate if it's personalized and if it's aligned with where they reside in the consideration continuum. So Dr. James says it like this in the course, if you got to this part where he says, big gifts happen when donors experience tremendous value. In order to raise $1 million, fundraisers need to provide donor experiences worth $1 million to the key donor prospects who can afford such gifts. I just love that because it really encapsulates this exchange of value for money. And it makes us recognize that our job is to facilitate deeper involvement with value that only you can provide as the conduit, right? You're the VIP concierge. Nobody else in the entire universe can provide them with these experiences so they can find meaning in their life. Very few can help them with that, but you can. So positioning yourself as this conduit for value and providing value is really important. So carefully consider the cumulative value that you aim to provide in your strategy over multiple. Here there are 6 value offers. It could be 7, 10, 20, or maybe just 3. And these slides will be sent to you. You can have them. Here's a little checklist to help you understand, like, hold on, is what I'm doing truly providing value? Does it educate them? Does it evoke emotions? Does it help them reflect on how they can give back and such? So if your value offer at each stage of the process doesn't check off some of these boxes, then it's probably not all that valuable. All right, so here's some examples. Like in the why stage, of course, what we do at MarketSmart, we offer surveys. That actually provides value to donors. And it's a very good offer for the why stage of the consideration continuum. But there's others. There's like a report or new research findings, tours I've already talked about, and things like of that sort. these are value-oriented offers that you can supply. The what stage will help them gain alignment between their interests and your programs. This is where now we understand their motivations, but the what stage is like, okay, let's gain a deeper alignment to understand how do we craft a gift that's right for you. Right. So that's where you introduce them to programs like scholarships, or there's a new wing of the hospital or there's training that we need for nurses. And since that nurse was with you and your mom all night, maybe that's the reason you'd like to invest in more training, things like that. So deeper involvement in actual programs and initiatives, so they understand where their money will be going and what it'll do. Then finally, you get to the how, and that's more intricate, that's more detailed, that's more like how big can my name be on the building, but also how can I give more wisely so that I can share more because I'm getting tax deduction or something, or because I'm putting this in a trust and then it's this and it's that. And so that's the how. So I got to kind of pick it up here so we have time to go into the groups and everything. I hope this is valuable. Developing. So here's your checklist for developing your strategy, which interestingly is 80% of your job, in my opinion. Like, of course, I'm selfish in saying that. Whoops, I think my screen just crashed. Bear with me. I don't know why that happened. Oh, here. Okay. Bear with me. Oh, can you all see my screen? Give me, oh, okay. I don't know why that happened. That was weird. When I say it's 80% of your job, it's maybe a little bit too much, but I fear that administrators, especially sometimes board members, leaders, they've got major gifts, plan gifts, staff involved in too many other things like events or crunching data, doing reports, going to meetings. And really a lot of what you need to be doing is thinking about the donor, learning from them where they are in the process, and then crafting these engagement opportunities. So I hope out of this that this will inspire you to spend more time on the strategy, because if the strategy is right, and if you keep updating it throughout the process, everything gets a lot easier. It just gets a lot easier, and the donor feels less friction. They feel less ambushed or solicited, and they feel more like they want to ask you, what do I do next? So here's your little checklist is, plot temporary at first, the ask amount, which you'll change later as you get to know the donor more, and the date. You're going to detail to yourself at first how the investment they make will relate to their original identity. Because if it doesn't, and it's always funny, like I heard one time a president of a small university said, just get me donors to meet with, and I'll inspire them to give to this new initiative. And it's like, hold on. If it's not relevant to them, you can't just decide that they're going to give to this. That is not how it works. But think about how the investment will relate to their original identity. Then you can make offers to the people who it resonates for. Then determine, what does the donor want in return for their money? Is it notoriety? Is it anonymity? That's like all the way. But there's something they want. Is it to be able to give back because they got a scholarship awarded to them? You have to understand that and plot that in there, and then how can you make the philanthropic experience worth that investment? Well, if they're a scholarship winner then how about maybe introducing them to some current young scholarship winners so they could hear their stories and they can share stories, right? So that makes the experience that much better for the donor. And you have to think about that think deeply about the donor and what you can do. And then even at the beginning, you might be able to do this, but this will be a placeholder too, is what potential giving instrument might you recommend? And that'll change as you go over time. And then think about whether it's fair. Like, is the request or is the investment gonna help truly help the beneficiaries of the gift, the organization, and the donor, and essentially the community? And then you determine how can you help them move themselves forward. So this is where you determine the value delivery in relation to the why, what, and how, and then you plot it out in a calendar. Okay, so I can provide this in Excel. It's an Excel file. This is basically what you want to plot out. And if you want this, just email me or info@iMarketSmart, and I'll send you a fresh one. But this is when did you start talking to them? That's their name, target gift amount, target date. Of course, it's going to close, possible giving instrument. In what stage of the consideration continuum are they? Are you still building trust? Are you gaining alignment with what? Are you reviewing giving options, talking about how? Did you give them a proposal? Are you dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and so on? You've got to recognize where they are, not where you are in the process, but where they are. And then think about their original identity, their motivations, their life story and values, and the people that their tribe they want to help, and then describe their interest in programs and how it resonates with their original identity. Try to determine what's the victory. How would they want to win? Or ask them, what is it that you want to get out of this? What's the impact you want to make? What's the gain that you want? What's the enhanced identity? How will you feel? How can you tell me, Ms. Donor, how do you believe you'll feel after making this gift? And try and determine, are they one who wants to repay, like the scholarship? Do they want to honor their mom? Is that why they're doing this? They want to honor their mom, something like that. Do they want to right wrongs? Maybe you're in advocacy, and that's your mission. So then once you've got that thought out, then you want to plot out these offers in a calendar, right? And Jim Langley, he's very popular on LinkedIn too. He says, even when dealing with the best of prospects, it takes on average 21 months and 9 interactions to secure a major gift. So that's about 2 offers in each of those stages of the process. So I know I went over my time. Now we're ready to break into groups. We'll probably only be able to do that for about 10 minutes, Tricia, but take us away, and everybody go, and it's like from the old TV shows. We're gonna all end up in groups. We'll have 10 minutes to chat. Tell your story of how you've strategically offered value. So did anybody here in their group a amazing offer that they've used? I heard one. I might put Megan on the spot. That they know strategically will help a donor move themselves forward. Anybody want to share? Don't all raise your hands at once.
I can share. One of the things that I mentioned that we do at Giving Kitchen, we're a nonprofit that helps serve food service workers who are facing crisis. And so we provide financial assistance to food service workers who are out of work due to death, illness, disaster, anything like that. And so we have a lot of impact stories from our clients. And so that's one of the things that we really use for our donors, is just their storytelling. And it's really, really useful. And as I said in our breakout session, we're excited about getting our Market Smart package started, which we've just launched. And so we're to get some more of those stories, and so that we can share those with more of our donors. And just hearing from the people in my group, one of the things that they used, a lot of folks, is using various different webinars and talking sessions. And I think that that's something that I will also take back to my folks, is trying to get maybe not even just client stories, which we often share, but programming side of things, like getting our client service workers to share stories about what they do every day in the office to help, support giving, and reaching out to our donors and setting up some of those kind of things and those kind of like talks, because everybody that we talked to in our group was saying that those were successful for them because they might not have the clients that can share the stories in the way that we do. So that was really useful for me. And Chad's lemonade stands.
Yes, thank you. And we appreciate you for being a Market Smart customer. Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited.
Megan, do you mind if I ask you to share your little story? It was good.
Oh, sure, I can. I'm Megan. I'm with the USO. And if you're not aware of the USO, it's an organization that supports the military throughout their time of service to our nation. And so I have a particular donor who is very generous, it seems, throughout the year and kind of available whenever there is an immediate need. So in an effort to kind of streamline those asks, we've tried to form a strategy to come up with a proposal of things we know, maybe an annual proposal. And currently, we know that this donor, from their historical giving, we know that they like to furnish USO centers. So we have this particular donor is in Atlanta, and we have a new USO center opening at Fort Benning, which is kind of in their backyard down in Columbus, Georgia. And so not knowing exactly where they stand and what giving level they would like to give to this project, but knowing they like furnishings, I've worked with the contractor to get furniture concepts of each room, as well as pricing for each room for the furniture that's going to be ordered. So it hit home. I told Greg, it's almost that menu approach of, these are our needs, these are the different levels, and making a lookbook, if you will, of all of the furniture concepts, getting it in the donor's hand. And then, as we all understand, getting that donor on site to be able to see the impact that they would make in person. So I think that resonated when Greg said menu, kind of meeting the donor where they are, knowing where they want to make a difference, and taking that historical approach so this is really hitting home in a current strategic effort that we're making with the donor. So
in the why, what, how, where do you think that fits as an offer?
I think it's almost a how at this point. I think that, to your point, they came to us with their desire and where they want to fit in. I think it's our job now to give them the how they can make a difference. And so I think we're making this lookbook and providing them with options on how they can make a difference, still meeting them in the impact where they want to meet. But I think that they need to tell us at this point, at what level of impact. I think how. What would you think?
I agree. Anybody else? To me, it might have been the what if you didn't yet know. In other words, a menu for the what stage would have been, well, you can do furnishings, you can do help at airports, you could do, welcome back ceremonies. I don't know what, the menu, but that would be a what menu. But you're right, you already know that this person really likes that. So now it's super personalized and it'll resonate that you created a catalog. And it's like, well, here's what you could do for $1 million. Here's what you could do for $500,000, and here's $250,000. And now your ask amount.
Exactly.
Or they'll tell you.
Hopefully, fingers crossed, that's how it will go.
I see there's a question in here. When you create a menu, Emma, is that then limiting yourself to it? Well, this is the interesting thing about restricted versus unrestricted, according to Dr. James' research. Again, it's a long course and you may not have seen this part, but in the course, his research found that when you offer, and I can't remember the exact amount, but when you offer a menu, More so than not, most of the time, they end up saying, okay, that's what I'd prefer, but you can use the money wherever you really see you need it. So it's counterintuitive that asking for, it's about resonating and showing that you care about them. And then the law of reciprocity comes into effect where they're like, oh, they really went over, they really crafted this for me, but I know you want, I don't want to tell you what to do. You use the money as you know you need to use it. And hopefully some of that will be for what do you see what I'm saying? So I don't have the experience like you all do, but his research says when you do that, it's counterintuitive, but you will end up with more unrestricted money. Did someone else have let's see, sorry, there's new messages here. Oh, Jeff was wondering why that donor was in favor of furnishing. Is it like, what is it? Because their mother was an interior designer, for instance? Is it because they always wanted to be in architecture and such? Bye, Kate. Yeah, well, I can stay over another couple minutes. But yeah, it's interesting how these things reflect on their original life story, their motivations, their values, their tribe, if you will. Like, do you know why they care about the furnishings?
I don't. It's just something that they typically had just historically gravitated to at multiple centers across the world, actually. So not to my knowledge.
Jeff has a good point that I'll recommend. He's kind of, is that you may want to go backwards a step with the donor and say, I was going to create this lookbook for you, but I wonder, like, why do you keep giving to this? And maybe, would you like to explore would you like me to present you with a menu of other programs? I'd hate to shoehorn you into this, or, maybe. So getting back to their life story and their why, and asking them about their motivations and then determining that.
Because I was going to say, I feel like, well, I get it, where you're being responsive in that situation. And odds are that that's probably really where the donor is focused. But it seems like you're leapfrogging in a way past the first two steps when we do that. I mean, I think we all do that, but it's always worth just, I think, throwing in that question, because maybe it's just a habit that they've got into. And, but maybe you have things in their record that indicate that they say, this is really important to me. It gives me a lot of satisfaction. And the case is kind of closed. But even then, I would still ask them, have you considered, we do have other needs, would you be interested in learning? I don't know what they would be specifically, but, maybe it's the staffing that you have at the centers or something that you need funding for.
So for sake of time, I'm going to wrap up, everybody, but I do want to let you know that, thank you, Stephen, because you even reminded me that you can't skip steps. You always have to start with the why, the what, and then the how. And it may be that somehow they got in their head years ago that this is the place of most need. So they're doing it for you, when what we really want to do is do it for them. So it's like, hold on. I had a VP of fundraising who is terrific, one of our longtime customers, who told me that she got a call for a $500,000 gift. And the donor was all ready to go. And she said, hold, and this was someone that she knew, but it was their first gift. And she said, I'm not going to accept your gift, she told me. She said, I appreciate it, but I got to make sure this is the right gift for you. So let's back up. Can I meet with you? I mean, look, if you want to just send in that money, I can't stop you, but I'd really love a chance to meet with you and make sure that this is the right gift for you. Very hard to do. Very counterintuitive, especially when people are telling you to close gifts and everything. But oh, this is the other thing about it. She ended up getting I forget what the amount was, but it was in the millions of dollars that she ended up getting. So you leave money on the table when you assume, I think. And if you go back to the why, what, how, craft that strategy, try to involve them. So it may not be that they need a lookbook. It may be that they need something else as an offer of value strategically along the process. So this has been fun for me. I don't know, I talked a lot. So, but I really appreciate you, even the customers. I know there's a couple that are potential new customers. I love seeing the regulars. Thank you very much. I hope you got value. If you did, please tell all your friends, bring more people, especially board members and administrators. They need to understand this stuff. It'll make your life easier if they understand what the hell you do. So, oh, someone's at my door. All right. Have a nice day, everybody.